I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the American shift on a two-state solution draws mixed reactions in the Middle East. The hearing for the U.S. ambassador to Israel does not go as smoothly as planned, and Israeli sports fans go crazy after a very special visit from some star American athletes. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. The White House's shift away from demanding a two-state solution is garnering a great deal of support from right-wingers in the Jewish state. Yet it's also been drawing fire from Ramallah. Many of Israel's nationalist politicians, such as Deputy Foreign Minister Tzipi Hotovely, are embracing the change in tone from the White House. The Likud party says that after years of deadlock, Trump's statement that he isn't insisting on a two-state solution opens a wide range of opportunities to the entire region. Israeli residents of the Efrat settlement in the West Bank are also voicing their content over Trump's stance.
It's a good idea to start thinking beyond the two-state for two-people solution and find another sort of common way that we could find peace between the two people.
Well, I think Trump is a businessman, and what he presented to Bibi is either one of two options, either one state or two states. Anyway, as he said, Israel will have to pay something for it. And finally, if you ask me, there would be a Palestinian state and an Israeli state.
Israeli opposition lawmaker and former foreign minister Tzipi Livni is taking a more cautious approach.
Thinking outside of the box is good. And as President Trump said, it's decision of both sides, Israel and the Palestinians. I do believe that two states for two peoples is the right solution because it gives an answer to the national aspiration of two different peoples.
The Palestinian Authority, however, is responding with alarm. PA President Mahmoud Abbas has reiterated his commitment to a two-state solution and continues to demand a halt to all Israeli settlement expansion. And here's what Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat had to say.
So undermining the two-state solution will spell disaster on Palestinians and Israelis, and that's the truth. We're talking about peace in the region. We're talking about defeating extremists and terrorism in the region. And you cannot do that by merely waging wars. We need to get our act together. We need to have peace between Palestinians and Israelis. Now, as Palestinians, our option is international legality, is international law, is to live and let live, is to have the state of Palestine live side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security on the 1967 lines.
Meanwhile, in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, Palestinians are expressing resignation and pessimism over the reaching of a peace accord with Israel anytime soon.
لكن أنا بعتقد إنه في الواقع لم يغير أي شيء. اللقاء هو نفس حديثه عن المستوطنات، حديثه عن الدولتين، دولتين، حتى صرح وقال لك أنا مش خلاف عندي لا دولة ولا دولتين، المهم يتفاهموا الطرفين، وهذا يعني بعتقد إنه لغى الحل السلمي نهائي في الضفة وغزة.
راح رئيس وأجا رئيس، يعني يجي أحسن منه؟ والله ما ظنيت. شعبنا هو الغلبان.
U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to move away from the U.S.'s historical unwavering support of a two-state solution has stunned much of the international community, which has long crafted its diplomacy based on the premise of a future Palestinian state. Yet America's ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, is doing what she can to calm the shock by insisting that Washington remains committed to the two-state solution. The U.S. diplomat is nevertheless being careful to echo the president's statements that while he's open to finding new ways to achieve peace between Israel and the Palestinians, a peace deal is not for Washington to impose, but can only come from the parties themselves.
Well, I think, first of all, two-state solution is what we support. Anybody that wants to say the United States doesn't support two-state solution, that would be an error. We absolutely support a two-state solution. But we are thinking out of the box as well, which is what does it take to bring these two sides to the table? What do we need to have them agree on? At the end of the day, the solution to what will bring peace in the Middle East is going to come from the Israelis and the Palestinian Authority. The United States is just there to support the process.
Haley then blasted the General Assembly and the Security Council for being focused on criticizing Israel, while stressing the Jewish state is the one true democracy in the Middle East. The ambassador says the U.S. will never let another anti-settlement resolution like 2331 pass, as the Obama administration did in December, which condemned settlement building. Haley went on to underscore Washington's determination to fight anti-Israel bias at the UN. The Lebanon-based Hezbollah terror group is also weighing in on the Netanyahu-Trump meeting with the ominous insistence that the summit effectively signals the end of peaceful negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. Hezbollah leader Sayed Hassan Nasrallah delivered the statements in a live televised speech.
اليوم بعد اللقاء وما صدر عن اللقاء بين نتنياهو وترامب حقيقة ما ببالغ أنا إذا بقول أمس أعلن بشكل شبه رسمي وفاة المسار التفاوضي. أعلنت الوفاة، انتهى الموضوع. بالنسبة للإسرائيليين ما في شيء اسمه دولة فلسطينية.
Nasrallah is also threatening that Hezbollah will demonstrate fierce resistance in any future confrontation with Israel if the Trump administration ever greenlights an Israeli attack against the terrorists in Lebanon. Yet the leader is basically playing down the prospects of any such a battle ever taking place. Israel last fought a destructive 34-day war with Hezbollah in 2006 after the Islamist Iranian proxy launched a cross-border raid into the Jewish state, killing 3 Israeli soldiers and abducting 2 others, whose bodies were later returned in a prisoner exchange. Since that time, Israel has targeted the group, including its military leaders, in several deadly strikes in Syria in recent years, although there haven't been any major direct confrontations. Arab news sources are reporting that Nasrallah's threatening statements follow an earlier warning from Israel that the Jewish state will respond forcefully to any Hezbollah aggression from either Lebanon or Syria. That message comes as Western intelligence agencies claim Hezbollah has beefed up its weapons arsenal to include advanced Russian-made Yakhont anti-ship missiles. Israeli security officials have warned that Hezbollah possession of advanced missiles constitutes the crossing of a red line. These rockets have a 186-mile range, which is within potential striking distance of Israeli gas fields in the Mediterranean Sea. They would also endanger commercial vessels sailing off of the Lebanese coast and the operational ability of Israeli naval ships. Israel's already working to secure the areas by installing naval versions of the Iron Dome missile defense system on its vessels. The Hezbollah leader has previously threatened strikes against the nuclear reactor in southern Israel, as well as an enormous ammonia tank in the city of Haifa, which was just ordered to be closed by an Israeli court. Since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011, a number of airstrikes attributed to the Israeli Air Force have targeted weapon shipments of Yakhont systems to Hezbollah from Damascus. Syria has a large arsenal of advanced arms of its own, thanks to its close ally, Russia. Well, there was a lot of drama at the first Senate confirmation hearing for David Friedman, who's been chosen by President Donald Trump to be the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. The nominee was confronted not only by many tough questions, but also several disruptions caused by protesters. The bankruptcy lawyer's thoughts on the peace process are very much in line with the Republican leader, who calls Friedman a close friend and trusted advisor.
I would be delighted to see peace come to this region where people have suffered on both sides for so long. I have expressed my skepticism about the two-state solution solely on the basis of what I've perceived as an unwillingness on the part of the Palestinians to renounce terror and accept Israel as a Jewish state. I think that, in my view, is a foundational problem. But I think it can be remedied, and I hope it is. Friedman's
stance against the 2015 Iranian nuclear deal is also in line with his prospective boss, as well as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
The Iran deal was something I felt passionately about. I was concerned that the United States was embarking upon a deal that presented an existential risk to Israel and potentially a significant risk to our great country as well. I didn't have access to all the classified information that the members of the Senate have, but from my perspective as a private citizen, I felt it was important to speak out, and I did so, again, in a private manner. Those are my private opinions. They'll be left in New York if I'm privileged enough to travel to the State of Israel for this mission.
But Friedman's appointment is strongly being opposed by several liberal American Jewish groups, who in the past he's scathingly referred to as the capo Jewish prisoners who were forced to work under the Nazi regime during the Holocaust. The nominee was compelled to address those derogatory comments at the hearing. 5 former U.S. ambassadors to Israel from both Republican and Democratic administrations are urging the Senate not to confirm Friedman. They all signed a letter branding his views on Jewish settlements and the two-state solution as extreme and radical. There were multiple outbursts during Friedman's testimony by pro-Palestinian activists.
He is unqualified to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel. He finances illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. Do not confirm David Friedman. He is a war criminal.
We will not be silenced. You do not represent us, and you will never represent us.
Israeli occupation is an injustice against Palestinians and a moral crisis for American Jews.
A 5-story apartment building in the settlement in the West Bank. David Friedman will far more likely provoke conflict in Israel and the occupied territory.
But despite the opposition against him, Friedman is likely to be confirmed by the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans. Popular Times of Israel blogger Sarah Tuttle-Singer has been an outspoken critic of U.S. President Donald Trump. But in a discussion with ILTV's Steve Leibowitz, Singer is now pointing out some unexpected positive developments.
It's pretty amazing, actually. Donald Trump has managed to do something that no leader has ever done, and he's uniting the progressive community. We are starting to look like the Republicans when it's election season at a convention. We are coming together in ways that I've never seen. People from all different colors, faiths, backgrounds, walks of life are seeing beyond the lines that divide us and really reaching across and creating friendship and community in ways that really move me. I was just in LA, and LA is a very, it's a liberal city. It's not like San Francisco, but it's definitely, they voted for Hillary, and it's got a very strong Democratic middle class base, along with other groups that support the Democratic Party. But there was a sense of purpose that I've never seen before everywhere. Even at Coffee Bean, a gentleness had kind of fallen over the cafes. In a way, I almost could liken it to the way Jewish Israelis behave toward one another during times of incredible strife, during the knifing attacks, or what I imagine it must have been like during the Second Intifada. I wasn't here for that, but I've heard remarkable stories about people pulling together. Or during wartime. I think there really is a sense of calamity where Trump is like the zombie apocalypse, and he has managed to bring folks together who are now working toward taking back Congress and also making sure that he is not elected again in 4 years.
I saw also some very practical things. There was a mosque burned down in Texas. Yeah. And the Jewish community opened up its doors, and the rabbi said there was no blowback, no negative feedback whatsoever from the community. Everyone wanted to bring the Muslim community into the synagogue, and the same goes for the Muslim community, had no problems in accepting help from the Jews.
That's amazing. Amazing.
You expect that'll continue?
I hope it continues. And one thing that I've noticed so far, and knock on wood, it continues this way, is nobody's making this about Israel. And first of all, it really isn't always about Israel, but we have a way of making it about us often, and also there's a reason for that, and that is because sometimes the very hard left community makes it about us too, with the flag burning and the anti-Israel chants. There really has been none of that.
A massive winter storm swept through the Middle East over much of the past week, dusting snow on northern Israel and freezing rain in Jerusalem. But the blast of torrential rains has wreaked havoc in nearby Gaza by damaging infrastructure and houses in the impoverished territory. Palestinian sources are reporting that the antiquated plumbing system in the Hamas-run Strip overflowed and erupted into a river of sewage flowing through residential areas. 8 families had to be evacuated from their homes. Others are continuing to struggle to drain the water out of their houses and streets with electric pumps and buckets. Some rescuers were spotted trying to help people reach safety on small boats, while others had to wade through the deep waters on their own. Critics accuse the Strip's Islamist rulers of perpetually diverting supplies needed for the reinforcement of public infrastructure in the enclave to the building of sophisticated terror tunnels into the Jewish state for the purpose of committing acts of violence against the Israeli people. Giving birth to a first child is supposed to be one of the most magical moments in a person's life, but that's not always the case. Every 4.5 minutes, a baby is born with a birth defect in the United States, and sometimes that number is even higher in other parts of the world. Now, one Israeli couple is facing a parent's worst nightmare after their first child was born with a life-threatening condition, and they need our help. Joining us today is Nadav and Adi Shalmon to tell us their story. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so let's begin. Tell us about what happened on the day your daughter was born.
Obviously, we're very, very excited. It's a first baby, and it's new for us, so the emotions were very high. And she was premature, but we had a lot of hope that the medical staff will take care of her in 2 months. Top, she will be out of the hospital and can join us back home and live a normal life. And just a couple of half an hour after the birth, and my husband came with a doctor, and she told us the news.
Now, this news, tell us a little bit about it. From what I understand, I'm going to explain it in the easiest English that's possible because I know it's a little hard for you guys. She has esophageal atresia. Sorry if I mispronounced that, doctors. It's a congenital medical condition that affects the alimentary tract, so when you eat, basically, and it causes the esophagus to end generally in a pouch at the end instead of connecting to the stomach, which makes it impossible to eat, basically. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that she is specifically facing?
In our daughter case, for example, if we try to get her some milk, instead of get
it down to the stomach.
Yeah, get it down to the stomach. It will go through the lungs.
Right, which is obviously very dangerous.
Yeah.
So, you now need to get this life-saving surgery for your daughter to be able to survive this. Where have you guys gone for help?
We found after a long search that there's a children's hospital in Boston, and there's a special unit for that, and there's 100% success.
Wow. So, essentially, if she got this surgery in Boston, that would hopefully end the story completely, right?
We'll bring her back home normal and
then she could, we could raise her up to be a fighter. All right. So, obviously, a surgery like this can be really, really expensive. What are the costs that you guys are looking at to be able to afford this?
Yes, it is very expensive. It's the cost for the operation is $430,000 US dollars.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there are probably some more expenses involved in flying all the way to Boston,
yes.
right? Because you have to actually transport the baby from Israel to the United States.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So what are you doing to raise this money?
Okay. So recently we've just begun our campaign to raise this huge amount, and hopefully we'll get it. Sooner than later.
But there's a long way to get the sum of money. Because
do you have a time frame though that you need to get that
money? Every day is crucial. Every day. Now she's fine, but tomorrow she can be worse and worse and worse. And I know the doctors are doing all that they can do to help her, but she's so tiny and she's a strong baby and she's so powerful, but we can never know.
Right. Now, you guys are a young couple. Did you see this? This is kind of like an example of how simple it is for these things to happen. You have no idea, right? Did you have any idea that there would be any, health issues when she was born?
No. We did all the tests that we do in Israel, and it's a lot of tests, and none of it, they didn't know anything.
It didn't show up. It just So
it's very difficult.
It's quite difficult to see it along the pregnancy.
So you went into the hospital not expecting this situation at all.
I gave birth 2 months or like premature.
Right.
32
weeks in advance.
Yes, and they didn't know why I am.
Why you ended up going into labor so early?
They didn't know why I'm getting into labor, actually.
It was obvious that something is wrong,
right?
But they didn't know
exactly what it was. They couldn't pinpoint
to put
it.
the finger. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, I mean, listen. I know that there are so many people who are watching this who probably want to help you guys and help save this little baby's life. So, what can they do?
Yeah. So there is an NGO called Kav L'Chaim, which helps us with all the donation and stuff.
And that's Israel-based. Kav L'Chaim.
Kav L'Chaim
Israel.
Okay, beautiful.
And they're helping us with the collecting all the donations. And if you can give, please, whatever you can give will be a perfect help for Ella, because even the small thing or spreading the word, everything will help her to live, actually. So. I'm sorry, I'm a bit emotional, you know, it's something deep inside, because it's not easy for us asking for money or help, but I know there's a lot of good people around, and everyone says like 4 months, everyone is trying to help us, and obviously the only thing that we want to see is our baby back home and normal, happy, smiling.
Well, we're going to do everything we can to try to make that happen, and I hope that our viewers out here can also help with this cause. For more information and to donate, just go to the link that's on the screen. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Natasha.
There's been an outpouring of both grassroots and governmental Israeli goodwill to help alleviate the suffering of Syrian refugees who fled the fighting that is raging in their homeland. Today, yet another effort is kicking off, this time a heartwarming joint mission by Jewish and Arab youth movements specifically aimed at homeless Syrian children. The Jewish Hashomer Hatzair group is teaming up with the Arab Ajyal movement to set up a community center and school for Syrian children stuck on the Greek island of Lesbos. The first delegation of 2 members from each movement leaves Israel today, accompanied by an older coordinator. The Jewish and Arab volunteers from Israel will work side by side, teaching math, English, and other subjects to the Syrian kids in the mornings at the community center, with informal activities slated each afternoon. They're being assisted by one of the Israeli NGOs that's already functioning in Lesbos, which shelters around 3,500 refugees at any given time. Private Israeli citizens are funding the project and have so far contributed around $53,000, which is enough for the next 3.5 months. Both the groups are hoping to keep their center's doors open even longer as compassionate Israelis continue to donate money to a crowdfunding campaign, enabling the children of their enemy state to further recover from traumas endured by the civil war. Israeli sports fans had the time of their life on Saturday night after hundreds got the chance to meet and greet 5 players from the U.S. National Football League in Jerusalem. The NFL athletes have been traveling around Israel for the past week as part of a sponsored trip, and while they've been cut off from speaking to the media, they were finally given the chance to meet local fans at Jerusalem's Kraft Stadium. The star players include Calais Campbell from the Arizona Cardinals, Dan Williams from the Oakland Raiders, Cameron Jordan from the New Orleans Saints, Michael Kendricks from the Philadelphia Eagles, and Delaney Walker from the Tennessee Titans. While the athletes seemed to be loving their trip in Israel, it didn't exactly start off on the right foot. The original group was supposed to include 11 players, but 6 pulled out after expressing discomfort with being used to represent Israel during the government-sponsored tour. After a public storm, trip organizers in Israel decided to cancel all of the press coverage, and since then, most of the players have been limited to sharing their experience on social media.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Sometimes it feels like no matter how many chores you do, there are still more to be done, which is why today's word is sidurim, which means chores in Hebrew. Some might say a clean house is a sign of wasted life, but it's important to remember that sidurim provides some necessary structure to our lives. There are lots of sidurim to take care of on a daily basis, from remembering to brush your teeth to taking out the trash. Even the things you know you should be doing, like remembering to call your grandma every day, day can seem tedious, but that's why we have sidurim, so that we remember. As annoying as it can be to get your sidurim done, just keep in mind they help promote discipline, and you'll feel a lot better once they're done. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
It's the beginning of a new week. Monday should be sunny with a high of 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. The temperature should stay about the same through Tuesday, but the sky will be partly cloudy. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.7 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next time.